We begin this chapter at night, and near the mountain ranges stand the Quo Vadis Church, New Testament faction, located at the outskirts of the imperial capital. A carriage arrived, and 3 men gathered there. The bald man spread his hands and, with a smile, told the punk rock-looking man in front of him that he looked younger. The man with a walking cane told the others that they held a great presence, as though they possessed more of God's power. He even noticed that he had lost some weight, probably because of his new concubine. The punk rock-looking man was the leader of the Manson church called Charles. Sticking out his tongue, he explained with a grin that his new concubine was a young woman who had a husband, but as he spoke of the doctrine and whispered about the soul's liberation, she came to him on her own. The bald man was the leader of the Om church called Om. He has the same name as his church. Laughing, he explained that the people will give offerings of gold or grain with just one word. There wasn't even a need for him to move. The man using the walking cane is the leader of the New World Church called Elmani. To him, no one would dare challenge the words of God. He took out a letter. The New Testament faction of Quo Vadis has sent an invitation to their sacred ceremony, which made them believe that they were being acknowledged as official branches. Om's eyes were filled with greed. He rubbed his hands together with a smile and began to lick his lips. The image of Saintess Dolores came to his mind. He knew that the sacred ceremony is an event where you consume white bread and white wine. It symbolizes the act of sharing and eating the saintess's body and blood. A way of making things official. They began to walk through the area. Charles commented that it was fortunate the New Testament cultists had finally come to their senses and reached out to them. Om fell into silent thought. On the other hand, Elmani turned to them and stated that those people had always acted so nobly, but now they finally understood. They understood that they could never win against the Old Testament cultists without the funds of these heretical groups. Just then, an explosion erupted behind them. Their eyes widened in surprise and confusion as they struggled to understand what was happening. They stopped and turned toward the source of the blast, trying to grasp what had occurred. The ground was littered with the remains of the carriage destroyed by the explosion and a single corpse. As the smokescreen slowly dissipated, a woman began to walk toward them, pleased to have finally found them. It was none other than Ouroboros. A powerful energy surged from her body. She stared at them intently, an excited smile spreading across her face as she wondered aloud why so much trash had gathered in this place. Her whip moved like a serpent, excited to feast on the blood of the living. In the blink of an eye, guards carrying shields and swords surrounded Ouroboros. At the same time, from a rooftop, Vikir and Dolores were watching everything. Dolores was somewhat surprised. Ouroboros had appeared exactly as Vikir had said she would. Vikir, who was crouching beside her, stared intently at Ouroboros in silence. Ouroboros unsheathed her whip. Om and the others approached her and, in a curious tone, asked how she was here. Showing a smug look and a smile, she explained that she had heard a report about the appearance of the night bloodhound, so she had come to check it out, but instead, she had only found what she considered a gathering of stinking trash. Hearing this, their eyes widened with rage, and they couldn't help but grind their teeth. They couldn't believe how that insolent bastard dared to talk that way. As the moon shone high in the sky, they ordered their men to kill her immediately. At that command, the guards drew their swords and, with furious gazes, began to charge toward her. Once they got close enough, Ouroboros' eyes shone with excitement. Without wasting a single second, she decided it was time to get serious. Her purple aura unleashed, covering her whip. Before the guards could even react, she flicked her whip like a thunderclap, slicing the guards' bodies to pieces. The guards' blood splattered across the faces of Om and the others, and their eyes widened in shock and fear. They couldn't believe she had killed all the guards with a single attack. As the corpses rained down from the sky, Ouroboros wiped the blood from her cheek with her finger and, with a curious smile, asked if they were the leaders of the guards she had just killed. Om began to sweat like crazy, stuttering in his words as he tried to speak. But just then, Charles extended his hand and told her to wait, asking how she dared make a scene in front of them. With an arrogant expression, Charles pointed his finger at her, declaring that he was the god of the Manson church. He added that now that he thought about it, she seemed to be his type, and that if she became his 21st wife, he would make sure she avoided divine punishment. Just before Charles could finish his sentence, Ouroboros moved like a thunderclap and, with a crack of her whip, sliced Charles's head clean off, sending it flying through the air. Seeing this, Ohm was paralyzed with fear. Unable to believe what his eyes were seeing, he could only stare in shock. Ouroboros, with open disgust, wondered how a god like Charles couldn't even block a single attack from her. El-Mani lowered his gaze to the ground and, with a furious expression, declared that he was not afraid of trash like her. With a determined look, he pointed his finger at her and shouted that he would never surrender, because he was the true god who had descended upon this world. Although deep down he was practically pissing his pants. Ouroboros casually threw a bottle that struck El-Mani squarely in the face, the liquid splashing across his skin. With a smile, Ouroboros held up the bottle and said that if he really was a god, nothing would happen to him even if he made contact with holy water. The moment the liquid made contact with El-Mani's skin, it began to burn like acid, causing him to writhe in pain and scream in agony. His skin was literally melting off his face. Ouroboros turned the bottle to show the label, which bore the symbol for poison. Telling the men that she was sorry for accidentally throwing poison by accident. Then she put the bottle away, extended her hand, and with a cheerful smile began to walk toward Ohm, telling him that now he was the only piece of trash left. Ohm began to sweat even more and backed away, begging for his life. He confessed that he was not a god or a priest, just a cultist, a heretic. Ouroboros stared intently at Ohm with an excited smile. With her so close, Ohm's eyes filled with tears and terror as he pleaded with her to spare him. She placed her foot next to Ohm's face, revealing that she had already known the truth. Seeing this, Ohm ground his teeth and panicked, knowing this was not going to end well. As a suffocating aura of energy emanated from Ouroboros's body, she asked in an arrogant tone what any of that mattered. Ohm began to scream like a madman as Ouroboros rips his body to shreds. Now the ground was filled with blood and corpses. As if nothing had happened, she began to walk through the area. Her steps were slow and almost lazy, as though the carnage at her feet was nothing more than an everyday sight to her. She carefully observed the corpses, wondering if they had planned to use her in this way. She looked down at the ground and couldn't help but smile, hoping to meet him one day. Her eyes began to shine, and as she stuck out her tongue, she grew excited. The only one who managed to stir this feeling in her was none other than the night bloodhound. Her thoughts were interrupted when a bright light emerged from the trees in the forest. Voices shouted that they had heard a scream coming from beyond the forest and that this time they would catch her. Hearing this, she snapped out of her thoughts, turned around, and, furious, ground her teeth. Then she braced herself and, with a single leap, disappeared from the place without a trace. On the ground lay Ohm, still alive, his body covered in whip wounds. Writhing in pain, he panted heavily. Vikir stood up, his gaze fixed on Ohm. He told Dolores that he would handle the interrogation, so she should search for the document containing the information they needed. Dolores watched Vikir attentively in silence. He slipped a hand inside his clothes. Then appeared near Ohm and pulled out the glowing Decoravia pendant, and, with eyes shining, demanded that Ohm tell him everything he knew about their funding. When Ohm opened his eyes, he saw Decoravia's glowing eye. It made it clear that before it, even staying silent was useless, and that he had to reveal everything he knew. Hypnotized by Decoravia's power, Ohm began to spill everything he knew, mentioning a ledger, the financing, and a top-secret document hidden beneath the floor of the carriage. Just then, someone noticed them in front of the church and shouted for them all to be captured. Vikir stood up and turned around, while Dolores went on high alert. Her eyes filled with concern. Dolores felt afraid, and Vikir's body tensed. He couldn't believe they had arrived so quickly. Not long after, someone carrying a spear slammed it hard against the ground. In the middle of the night, an army of guards arrived at the scene, only to find corpses and no trace of the night bloodhound or Ouroboros. At the same time, Dolores wiped the sweat from her cheek. She was panting heavily to catch her breath, but now that she was far from the church, she felt relieved. She had almost been caught. Vikir changed the subject and asked if she had found the ledger. Showing the ledger with a confident smile, she nodded. Vikir took the book, and as his eyes shone with curiosity, he opened it and began to read in silence. With a sad look, Dolores said that the people who had died in front of the church moments ago were evil, and that she will never forgive them. The image of Charles and the others smiling wickedly flashed in her mind. They were evil people who took advantage of people's emotions for their own benefit. She remembered how the ground had been littered with corpses and blood, and she understood that the method, though crazy, was simple and effective. This was what the night bloodhound had meant by wiping them all out. After catching her breath, she stood up and, with a curious gaze, asked the night hound how he had known Ouroboros would appear in this place. Vikir clenched his fist tightly instead of answering her question, and noticing this, she felt somewhat confused. Under the moonlight, he revealed that it was the conglomerate bourgeois family. Dolores's attention fixed on the book, her eyes widening in confusion as she realized she didn't understand what our boy was talking about. Holding up the book, Vikir revealed that they were the ringleaders of all these incidents. Vikir handed her the book, and she began to read. He explained that if she looked at the transaction in the ledger, she would see that the pseudo-cults had been given an enormous donation by the bourgeois family. They have been purchasing the Old Testament faction's exemptions with that money and have deepened the conflict between the Old and New Testament factions. In a confused tone, she asked why they would do something like that. Vikir lowered his gaze to the ground. Imagining a golden tree, he explained that the most troublesome power for demons was divine power. They've been planning to destroy the foundation of divine power for a very long time. Vikir's eyes widened with certainty as he realized that all of this was likely a preemptive attempt to eliminate any obstacles before the time of the fall began. With a serious expression, Dolores asked if this time he planned to assassinate the key figures of the bourgeois family. Without a moment of hesitation, the bloodhound gives a firm yes to her question. Dolores placed her hand under her chin and began to think, pointing out that most members of the bourgeois family probably lived in grand mansions with strict security measures. She wondered if it would really be possible to infiltrate such places and to even assassinate them there. Vikir said that this time they would have to make the bourgeois family come for them instead. Hearing this, Dolores snapped out of her thoughts, her eyes widening in surprise. Showing a gold coin, Vikir explained that money attracts more money, wealth attracts wealth. They just need to have a lot of money that will make the bourgeois family approach them first. With a confident expression, Vikir added that, fortunately, he has a friend that's very rich. Batman rich. Several days later, Vikir was somewhat annoyed. A beautiful woman with red eyes stretched his cheeks and teased him by calling him little brother, saying that she had missed him very much. Vikir could do nothing but curse his situation.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.